And we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. It's a snack pack, everyone. Go to your kitchen. It's okay. You can go there right now. Hop to the fridge or to the pantry. Grab that snack. It's a snack pack. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here for Lakers Fast Break. Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every week, twice a week on radio stations worldwide, and of course, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, as well, Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Later this month, we'll be covering the NFL Draft. You know, Chris Sardieri and Dominic Lardieri from the Domination Sports Nation will be back talking about who won and who lost in the NFL Draft. Plus, also as well, of course, Joe Soro. Joe Soro and I, we could not get to doing a show last night. He was really busy with Simblades. Simblades with the Y.com, and also, of course, outside 47 at LakersBall.com. We will be making up for it because we will have a show later this evening at 10 p.m. Pacific. I've already scheduled it out. So we'll go ahead and have a late night snack pack for you right there for you. But it is, of course, Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much again. Please go ahead and give some love to John Costa from Lakers Corner and Clutch Talk. Also, as well, Stone Hansen, who is back doing prospect analysis. Please go ahead and get some of the best prospect analysis for this upcoming NBA draft right there for you at report_court. Follow him on Twitter. A lot of great things. He's doing 7, 10, 15 tweets a day in regards to the NBA draft. So just go ahead and check out what he's doing there. So please go ahead and follow him. Also as well, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Yo! Also as well, of course, Lakers in 5, Empire Jeff TV, all of our good crew. Please go ahead and support them and support us by liking, following, subscribing, whatever you can do to support us. It is sincerely appreciated from all of us here at the Lakers Fast Break. It is NBA Observations, getting my shows right. And we're observing the NBA playoffs coming with the Lakers coming down to the final days with the game tomorrow in Memphis and then on Sunday at New Orleans. What will the standings be like? The Lakers are play-in bound no matter what they do in the next 2 games, no matter what anyone else around them does. They are play-in bound. So we'll go ahead and discuss a little bit more of that today, but also we will definitely touch on that in detail on tonight's snack pack with Joe Soro as well. But here today to discuss the different playoff scenarios is a good man indeed. He returns to us from Orlando Magic Daily right there for you as part of the fan-sided experience among some of the many things that he covers in the world of sports. It is Alfred Ezman, the hardest working man in sports journalism. What's going on, my friend?
I wish, Gerald. I wish I worked as hard as some other people, but I'm doing pretty good. Playoffs right around the corner. Excited for that as always. The Orlando Magic have been laying an egg, to put it as kindly as possible, these past few games. So
I know the feeling all too well with the Los Angeles Lakers. Yes.
Yeah, it's been rough, but they're kind of slowly but surely making a crash landing into the playoffs in some facet. So we'll just have to continue to see how it goes. But having a good night. Looking forward to some more basketball in the future and can't really complain.
There you go. So again, we've got a lot of action going on. Eastern Conference that you cover primarily, and then the Western Conference that I cover primarily. A big game last night. It was the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are the talk of the league in many different ways. Even more news team today, and that's going to be very interesting. And Joe and I will cover the Tim Connolly situation as well later on tonight, because there might be a Lakers angle and all that, as we always try to make something into a Lakers angle. But my friend, when it comes to the Eastern Conference, we'll go ahead and start there first before we get back over to the Western Conference. Wanted to ask your thoughts. It is obviously Boston's, as far as they're already got the number 1 seed locked up throughout the playoffs. They barely gave an effort against the Milwaukee Bucks, and they didn't even bother to foul them at all. In fact, actually, the refs didn't bother to call any fouls. They called 1 foul as far as 2 free throw lines. 2 free throws. 2 free throws were made as far as attempted by Giannis Antetokounmpo, who hurt his calf later on. But yes, 2 free throws. When you hear that, Alfred, the other day, what goes through your mind when a whole 48-minute game, only 2 free throws are called?
Unbelievable and uncanny, especially in this NBA where there's so much emphasis on the landing space issues and rules with shooters and whatnot. I wouldn't say, if Joe was here, he might say something a little different, but as far as contact stuff goes, they're a bit stringent, I'd say, on that as well. So it's mind boggling to think that there were so little free throws in that game. I'd be willing to bet. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'd be willing to bet that was probably the least amount of free throws in an NBA game ever or in
Oh
recent
yes,
memory. Yeah.
by almost 10. I think,
Oh my.
yeah, because I think 11 was the least amount between two teams, and no team had ever recorded 0.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yes, so that's very like wow.
Yeah.
Um,
It's unbelievable. I mean, I didn't know what to make of it. I saw the Giannis injury was the big story from that day, and it just kind of a crazy setup. I mean, you would expect a little more of a physical game, especially between the two teams that are going to be at the top of the East come playoff time.
yeah.
But it's just shocking to me to say the least.
What also shocking, my friend, is that the Milwaukee Bucks still, despite since getting Doc Rivers as their new coach, them maintaining somehow miraculously second place in the Eastern Conference. They have tried very hard, Alfred, to give up second place in the Eastern Conference. They played literally at or under 500 balls since Doc Rivers has arrived, yet they've not managed to give away the second place in the Eastern Conference. Now they've got an injury to deal with Giannis Antetokounmpo, who I don't know when he's coming back. He might be ready for the first round of the NBA playoffs. We'll see, but I'm not going to bet against him because remember, he bent his leg backwards in the finals run, and he managed to go ahead and be okay after hyperextending his knee there. So I don't want to say you don't want to underestimate the Milwaukee Bucks, or you want to just, they've had such a bad or underperforming season. You just want to go ahead and forget about them. But however high you have the Knicks, however low you have the Bucks and the Cavaliers, sometimes momentum going in the playoffs doesn't always mean everything. So I don't want to say that the Cavs and the Bucks are really, who have been struggling hard as of late, really just forgotten about in the Eastern Conference playoff picture.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Giannis's injury, it seems from what I'm hearing, and they can afford to do this. They're going to sit him until the playoffs start, and obviously it's the right move. I don't think it's going to be too much of an ordeal for them. I think he's going to be able to return at least at some point in the first round. He might be ready for game one, but he has time for that. They have no reason to really play that much, really play him that much right now. They don't have a lot to play for. They have that 2 seed essentially wrapped up, but I do think with Cleveland, for example, another team that's kind of floundered a little bit. They're in a similar spot to what I see from Orlando, whereas they're one of the best and most tenacious teams on defense, but at times they struggle to score when they don't have their, those 3 rotational guys in there in, Allen, Garland, and Mitchell. And that's really where a lot of their scoring comes from. And then, of course, Evan Mobley's been out for extended periods of time this season, and that's been rough on them. So they're an interesting team as well. I think a lot of it's going to be matchups. I think one team the Bucks don't want to see. We talked about this last time I was on here. One team they don't want to see is Philly with Embiid. I think that'd be kind of a nightmare first round matchup for them. And with Cleveland, and there's I can go down the list of a lot of Eastern Conference teams they wouldn't want to play. They're going to have to really, work hard this first round, especially if you remember last year's playoff exit they had. Very
Mhm.
disappointing playoffs for them with how they had things going during the regular season. So really, any team outside of Chicago and Atlanta, if they somehow make it through the play-in, I think Cleveland's going to have to work for it. And I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes, but that's really what I think about Milwaukee and Cleveland. I think Milwaukee, despite the struggles they've had, they had that 4-game losing streak, losing to teams like the Wizards. I'm trying to remember the other ones. Let me see. I have it up right here. Knicks was one, but also Raptors and Grizzlies. That just not good losses. But at the same time, if you the first round matchups that Boston and Milwaukee would have would, in theory, pass them on to the conference semifinal. Unless Milwaukee plays Philly, then I think we have a whole different conversation.
Once again, it is Alfred Ezman. Please go ahead and support the great work that he's doing today at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. One of the things I wanted to go ahead as far as the bottom part of the bracket with starting with Orlando, I'll start with them. Then you get Indiana, Philadelphia, Miami, and then Chicago and Atlanta. Atlanta's already punting the season. They already announced what Jalen Johnson and Okongwu are both out for the rest of the season, if I'm not mistaken. Chicago, the geniuses that they are. Now, watch out. It's a 3-0 fast break. Oh, they missed out on it. Easy slam dunk because, Andre Drummond thought that was his lob. And yeah, that was hilarious. Could not stop laughing when I saw that. So I don't put much stock into anything either of those two teams have. But when you get to Miami and get to Philadelphia, God help you if Philadelphia moves up into the 5th or 6th slot, Alfred, and gets a week off with Joel Embiid coming back. Giving him a week off of rest could be detrimental to anyone that they play against in the first round of the NBA playoffs.
And it's very possible. I mean, they have Orlando this next game. They have a few guys out, but I'm almost certain Embiid is going to play that game for them. And they're a game back from both Indiana and Orlando for that 5th and 6th spot. So it is very much in the cards for them. Orlando, just I hate to do this to everybody. I'm going to talk about them for a sec too. They really have to kind of bear down. They have to bear down, these last 2 games and at least get a win against either Philly with Embiid. I think that's the harder of the two. But then you can finally go back to Orlando and you have a Giannis-less and Chris Middleton-less Bucks team that you can really beat at home when you're way better at home than you are on the road. They kind of got to bear down and win because there's a chance Orlando ends up in the play-in, which about, I don't know how long ago, a week ago when you and I talked, it seemed like they just were not going to be a play-in team and they were going to find a way.
They had a chance for the 2nd seed in the NBA Eastern Conference.
Yeah. They absolutely did, and that's quickly gone off the rails for them. And even the 3rd seed at this point, New York seemingly has that locked up unless they really screw around. They are playing right now, something to keep an eye on against Boston.
They're leading right now against Boston, so we'll see what happens there.
We'll see what happens with that, but New York really controls their own destiny with that 3 seed at this point. And, even Indiana, I mean, you look at them and they have a shot at getting that 5th seed and stealing it. They don't have an overly bad schedule either. They go to Cleveland to play a struggling Cavs team and then are at home against Atlanta, who, like you said, has pretty much pulled the plug on this season, even being in the play-in. I mean, so Orlando's under a lot of pressure, and this Philly team really is kind of starting to weave their way into the conversation for a 5th and 6th spot. And man, oh man, if that's just a team I would not want to play if I'm the 4 seed or the 3 seed facing Embiid in the first round. It'd be a nightmare scenario for New York and Cleveland, let's say, if it ends up that way.
I'm just going to say this about Atlanta, and then we'll move on. I know the rumors are out there for, should they trade Trae Young or DeJounte Murray? Why not get offers for both? And if you like them both, move on. Rebuild under Jalen Johnson because he could be the best one of those 3. I understand Trae Young is who he is, but Jalen Johnson, I really like as a player. He could be very dynamic for that team, and I know the temptation should be there if they get some really sweet offers because DeJounte Murray has played well in Trae Young's absence. I would consider both of those players, putting them out there, seeing what you can get, and if you can get some really sweet offers, taking both of them. Taking Capella off your hands to get it, that final year off your back and rebuilding with Jalen Johnson and rebuilding it in a manner that maybe in 2-3 years can get you back really where you need to be in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think they're in the position. We talked about this back at the trade deadline. DeJounte Murray was the talk of the town between you and I. And I think, this experiment that they've done in Atlanta really just hasn't panned out. They have a good rookie set piece in Jalen Johnson. Really like what he provides. If you look at this season, 16 points a game, 9 rebounds a game, 3.5 assists on 51% shooting from the field. And, oh, by the way, 35% from the 3-point line. That is the best he's had so far in his career. I just said he was a rookie. That's my mistake. He's been there before. Yeah. But regardless, he's having this is his breakout season. And it's been very apparent that it has been. He's become the 3rd option behind the main 2 in DeJounte and Trae. And they've held on to those 2 forever. And they had one good run back in 2021 to the Eastern Conference Finals. And outside of that, it's really just been a lot of nothing. So, they can look for trade offers from them. There are teams that would throw a lot on the plate for Trae Young and would throw also a good amount on the plate for DeJounte Murray. So I think that's a smart move for Atlanta. I would be willing to guess that's what they're doing if they're sitting Okongwu and Johnson as the season progresses, because they don't want those two guys to get hurt for future things, and they just kind of want to ride this out into the off season and deal with trade talks and all this stuff. So I think that's kind of the motion that they're going towards, is just kind of looking ahead to the offseason past the plan at this point, because at this point the plan for the East, if you're the 9 and the 10, you're going to have a hard time making it past Miami and Philly. So it's just the way it worked out for them, and I think it's smart of them if they were to do that. And I think if you're a Hawks fan, you're looking at that and being pretty happy about it.
Once again, it is Alfred Ezman. Please go ahead and support him today at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. We now go to the Western Conference. And again, last night's game between Denver and Minnesota, actually until the fourth quarter, Denver broke it open. But until then, it was back and forth. And Minnesota, despite not having Cat on the team, looked very formidable against Denver on the road. And I was really happy with the way that, as far as the overall tough matchup between the two. I really like when I see those competitive games back and forth, and it was really nice to see for 3 quarters. But again, Denver broke it open in the fourth quarter, as they should have without Cat in there. But Cat coming back as early as Friday's game, and you might see a different story there. A lot of people, like our own Jamie Sweet, initially from the get-go was in on Minnesota as a top-tier team. So we'll see what happens, my friend. Oklahoma City is not out of the running yet either for first place in the Western Conference, so we can't entirely shoot them out there. But your thoughts before we get a little bit deeper into the Western Conference, especially where the Lakers are at, your thoughts on the top 3, the battle between the Nuggets, Timberwolves, and the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Well, I've told you, Gerald, I just love the idea of Minnesota and Oklahoma City kind of climbing to the top throughout this year. They have some great star-studded talent all across both those teams. And I mean, they're knocking right on the door of the Nuggets. Now, I think that's a hard thing to do. The Nuggets are the defending champs, and I think that is the team to beat out of the West, even regardless if the Nuggets don't get that 1 seed. I still think they're going to be the team to beat out of the West. But it creates a good competitive competition, because I think those 2 teams in the T-Wolves and Thunder, they really want to get that 1 seed and have to play whoever makes it out of the play in the West on a home court advantage type of style. Because you look at the play-in teams, and if you get a team like, sorry to pick on them, if you get a team like the Lakers who are below 500 on the road, it would be hard for the Lakers to go into places like Minnesota and Oklahoma City and win, especially Oklahoma City. If for those of you who are nostalgia people and remember way back when they had that big trio of Westbrook, Durant, and Harden, that place got loud during playoff time. And I would imagine it'd get pretty loud again if Oklahoma City was a top seed in the West. So those would be tough places to play. And they're young teams that kind of want that. I think, SGA would be able to feed off that crowd's energy, and would 100% be able to feed off of Minnesota's energy. So obviously they're still very, very competitive for that 1 seed. Going forward, I don't think Minnesota has a tough schedule. Let me see. The Hawks and Suns, both at home. Suns game might be challenging because they'll be, shooting to make it past the Pelicans for that 6th spot. And then if you go and look at the Thunder, their schedule remaining is the Bucks and Mavs. So 2 tough games for them, but they're both at home again. So
the Mavs might be starting to rest the people because they're already locked into the 5th seed.
Okay. So yeah. So, the Thunder will get that advantage, and regardless, those 2 teams have both their last 2 games at home. So that they're really in the driver's seat for what they can do to get that 1 seed. A lot of it also depends on what Denver's doing. So we'll just have to wait and see, but they're certainly gunning for that 1 seed and want it over the Nuggets.
I think they're a game behind, but I don't know if they have I don't think they have the tiebreaker against the Clippers. But I think that's why they're going to be locked in the 5th seed. But again, they are a game out. So, I guess if the Clippers can go ahead and lose 2 and Dallas wins 2, then I guess they've got it. So we'll see what happens. But Dallas could easily sit their guys out on the last game, and we'll find out if that's going to be the case. But if not, it could be a battle for 4th, and definitely would like to see that happening, because the Dallas and the Clippers series is very intriguing to me, and it's intriguing to a lot of people.
Oh yeah,
our resident Dallas fan Frank that always stops by in the chat. Big shout out to him whenever he's available. Yeah, he's looking forward to that, I'm sure. But to get right there again, you see Denver You see Minnesota, OKC. It's not totally been finalized yet as far as the top of the Western Conference. 4 and 5, totally not finalized yet, but with a win for the Clippers and a loss to Dallas will seal it for a 4-5 matchup there. New Orleans, Phoenix, and Sacramento, 6th, 7th, and 8th. That has yet to be decided. We still think of all the teams, the Phoenix has the hardest way to go, but they did get a victory last night against the let's not show up with any of our players Clippers last night. So let's see if the Phoenix Suns can still continue their winning ways and get that done. But New Orleans, again, they play both Golden State and the Lakers in upcoming games. So despite what you say about Sacramento, despite what you say about Phoenix, New Orleans has it pretty hard for themselves as well for that 6, 7, 8 seed.
Yeah, they do. I mean, you look at Golden State, that's a half game back from LA. So obviously I think they'll want that 9 and 10 game at
and Golden
inside.
State has the tiebreaker.
Yes, so they're really going to want to have that game in the Bay Area as opposed to going all the way to crypto, and that's a huge deal. So Golden State's going to be gunning for that win, and I mean, that game's in Golden State too when New Orleans goes there. So that's very tough for the Pelicans, and the Pelicans even have a game tonight. I think they do play in Sacramento tonight, so that'll be a huge game to watch as well.
So they play Sacramento, Golden State, and the Lakers. So they play the 8, 9, and 10 seeds.
Right. All playing teams. I mean, and it's playing teams that are fighting and nudging each other for position. So New Orleans is really going to have to earn their way into the actual 1 through 6 playoff format if they want it that bad. And it'll be tough. We talked about the Brandon Ingram injury, how that's, really put a kink in the hose, so to speak, for them. But we'll have to see if they earn it. That's a game I'd be locked into a lot this evening is the Kings and the Pels.
So that's funny because if it works out, let's say, all right, it's just a scenario. What if, let's say the Pelicans lose all 3 games and they go 47-35. Let's say Phoenix loses its 2 games and they're 47-35. Sacramento somehow also manages to get, they all could end up, Alfred, with a 47-35 record. All these teams could somehow manage to do that, I believe. If I'm not looking, unless somehow that just doesn't work out as far as when they play each other. But I think it works out to where they all could be 47-35. And if that's the case, that would be very maddening for all these tiebreakers involved.
Oh my goodness!
I would love to see that. I would personally love to see that.
I would too. I told you before when I was on here that the bottom of this Western Conference, do not turn your blind eye to it. It is just packed to the brim with all this competition and whatnot. I mean, it's so many, like you said, it's so many tiebreakers to go over with everything going on. If that were to happen, that really creates some shifting in the West and really kind of changes the facet of these series. And it could change since we have the Thunder, let's say, remaining in that 3rd spot. It could change whoever the Thunder play, and they might not like the matchup as much as the other team they would get. So a lot would be riding on on whatever would happen with those 3 teams tying up.
Now, if all of them miraculously ended up at 47-35, the Lakers and the Warriors still could not avoid the play-in. Under any scenario, the Lakers will not, or the Warriors will not be able to get 6th place. But that means 7th to 10th place is still in play. And again, if you're avoiding 1 extra game in the play-in, that would be tremendous. But again, we'll see. The Lakers have to go ahead tomorrow at Memphis and at New Orleans and get it done. You said they're not a great road team. They have not been a great road team until this last road trip when they were 5-1. So we'll see what happens. Again, I do want to give an update, though, and I'll say it again later tonight. Anthony Davis has been listed as probable, so he looks to be finally coming back for the game against Memphis. And Ron James, as usual, questionable with his ankle tendonitis, but I expect him to play as well. So Gary says they're going to get smoked. I disagree. I think that playing a team against Memphis that's going to already tank for the season, they're getting prepared for the summer. I think that's good. And then in New Orleans, again, you never know. They have played New Orleans well. We just have to look at the IST, how well they played against them. So again, anything is possible the next couple of days. We'll see. But it is Alfred Ezman here from Orlando Magic Daily. So again, I definitely want to bring it back as it gets closer to some larger playoff contests, because it's always great to bring you back for NBA observations. But when you look at the West, again, it's a murderer's row from 1 to 10. You don't see the same kind of questions and the same kind of, I guess, the teams like that you see in the Eastern Conference that may not be as well or complete or as tough to look at when you look at on the surface as far as black and white for these teams. But who do you see as far as by the end of the dust, when the dust settles, you think has the easiest path to get those that 6th, 7th, 8th seed as far as for the Western Conference?
Yeah, for the West, well, the team who I think has the hardest one, I guess I'll start hard to easy here. The hardest one after looking at it, because I didn't even know their schedule up until now, is the Pelicans, and that's just because they're playing all three teams who are right in that play-in area, either right on their tail or fighting like the Warriors and Lakers for the 9 or 10, flip-flopping back and forth for that home court advantage for the play-in game. So I think New Orleans has the hardest path just because they have teams right behind them that they're going to play, including one tonight in Sacramento. Looking at the other ones, Sacramento's schedule, I heard you just said the Suns have a pretty rough going.
The Suns still have
the
2 games. Yeah, the Suns still have two tough teams coming up as far. Let me go ahead and bring it up. Yeah, they actually had, like I said, when they were going into it, credit to them that they've still not managed to fully implode, because they did have one of the toughest schedules of what the last month. The last month was for them was one of the toughest on record for NBA teams as far as the winning percentage against who they had to face, and they've gotten through it pretty good. They're at Sacramento and at Minnesota to finish off their season. Although Minnesota's still fighting for first place in the Western Conference, so they may not pack it in. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, Sacramento isn't.
No, we'll have to see. So actually, wow, that makes it pretty tough between New Orleans and Phoenix. Sacramento, I'll give them the benefit. They do have the Pelicans. They do have the Suns all at home in Sacramento, and then they get that kind of I don't have a better term. They get a cookie game against Portland in the season. So Portland's obviously already packed it in. They're fighting for a good draft pick and good lottery odds at this point. But I mean, so that's why Sacramento, if they were able to get through these 2 games against New Orleans, who they're competing with right now for a 6th spot, and Phoenix, who's right around in their area as well, they have a gimme in quotes game against Portland then this season, and they could end up getting through somehow and getting it done. So I put Sacramento as the easiest and best path to getting there. And then flip a coin, honestly, for this Pelicans Suns, who has a harder schedule going forward, because it's just so difficult to see. Minnesota, you would think, is just out of their tax bracket with where they're at. But honestly, Minnesota, like you said, Minnesota's competing with Denver for that 1 seed, and they won it. Those 2 teams that I told you, the younger teams that are at the top of the West, won it. So it's just difficult. The Pelicans and Suns really have it rough, whereas the Kings do play those 2 teams, but it's a rough game for them to play, and also a rough game for the Kings to play. The Kings just have that one game that kind of favored them in the end with Portland. So I don't know. I could definitely see Sacramento making it through, and then New Orleans and Phoenix, with that 7 and 8 game in the play-in.
I will say this: it looks like more and more that New York leading at halftime by 16 over Boston. It looks like Boston's tanking it in. So, looks like any fascination you might have had with Orlando, playing with the second or third, I think that's going to go and bye tonight right there in Boston, because it looks like Boston's packing in. Chicago is leading Detroit in the third quarter, despite themselves, by 10. And then, of course, tonight we've got Golden State going to Portland. That should be an easy victory for them. And New Orleans and Sacramento. That's the one we'll be watching later tonight, and Joe and I will report on it. But yeah, very interesting. Alfred says Gerald thinks Minnesota is beautiful for the Lakers. Gary, you are the most optimistic person I know in the chat. Yes, absolutely. I will be dealing with your comments later on here in the show, not the ones you made today, but the one earlier. I'll be dealing with that actually tonight with Joe. We've got some comments I've got saved up, and I've got some things I got to tell both you and Rodell here coming up later on tonight on the snack pack. So I'll be dealing with you later. But it is the Lakers Fast Break. Truly appreciate you guys joining us. It is Alfred Ezman from Orlando Magic Daily. So again, the plot thickens. It definitely does not look definitive one way or another, and that's just the way the NBA drew it up. Just the way they drew it up, as far as how they wanted this play-in structure to be in, give teams at 9 and 10 a chance. It does make it harder for trades. It does make it harder for drafting purposes as far as how to calculate that out. But you know what? Again, it's created controversy, it's created talk, and it's created a lot of interest in the league that you might not necessarily otherwise have.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at, I think the prime example of what you just said with difficulty drafting and stuff is Atlanta. I mean, it seems like to me and you, when you brought it up that those two players, Okongwu and Johnson, weren't playing, it just seems like Atlanta wanted a lottery pick. And I mean, they might end up getting one, but I mean, they're not, they're going to have to play a playing game, at least one at some point.
Well, let me
So,
say this. It's like a dichotomy. Okay. The play-in
mhm,
scenario is like a dichotomy as far as teams that should be there and shouldn't be there. Like the Lakers and Golden State. Golden State and Lakers are 10 games above 500.
right.
Those are great. Those are really good teams, despite what Gary A will say. These are good teams. And if they were in the Eastern Conference, they'd be a lot higher in the Eastern Conference standings.
Mhm. Yeah.
Whereas when you go into the Eastern Conference, you've got Chicago and you've got Atlanta. These teams are purgatory. These teams didn't do a good job of losing, and they certainly didn't do a good job of winning enough in order to
Mhm.
get them anywhere even close to sniffing. It's not a Miami team. They're not anywhere near close to what a Miami team could or did last year, is what I'm trying to say. So I guess it's a dichotomy of what really, good teams that you might have at the 9 or 10 seed, like you do in the West, and the really bad teams that you have that, I don't know. It's like they're looking for a future, but are they when they're in the spot they're in? You'd think they would have tried harder to tank more if that was the case.
Yeah, certainly. And I've talked about this with you a good bit. The bottom does fall out in the East once you get to the 9 seed, and it's very apparent. Like I'd be willing to put a lot of money on Miami and Philly to make it past those two, simply because they're just better. They're just all around better. They look better. I mean, Atlanta, and for doing records, Atlanta and Chicago's record. Chicago's 37-42. Atlanta's 36-44. They're both below 500 um, by at least 5 games on either side. So it's concerning to see for those two teams, because I'm sure Chicago wants to find improvements just as much as Atlanta does, but Chicago didn't. They're not. They're kind of in no man's
They're a
land right now.
veteran-laden team with a lot of
Mhm.
bad contracts, with a point guard that may never play the game of basketball again. And then you have Atlanta again. They sniffed at Eastern Conference Finals 3 seasons ago, I think.
Yeah.
Thought the world was going to be in their hands. It went off the rails. Got a coach that everybody thought was going to change the team around and didn't. And now they're sitting on some pretty expensive contracts, and they've got decisions to make on which way they want to go as well. So it's going to be very hard and difficult for those teams to really figure out which way they want to commit to going forward. It's easier for a team like Golden State, the Lakers, Sacramento, Phoenix. Those teams have winning records substantially. They're better teams by far, and they can go ahead and justify anything that they want to do as far as trying to improve their team. Although, should they? Again, we have the summer to discuss, but yeah, it's kind of funny how the play-in scenario for both conferences is still kind of weirding itself out as far as 2 teams or 4 teams that are really, really good in the Western Conference, and maybe 4 teams that are okay with a 7 and 8, and not so okay with a 9 and 10.
Yeah, certainly. And I love what you said too, because it makes kind of doing thinking about your future, if you need to, a headache for certain scenarios, and especially the bottom two in the East. That is their scenario. They have a lot to think about, and one would argue they did it in a weird, maybe not wrong, but like a really weird and strange way, because they're technically a playoff team by being in the play-in. So it's interesting to see. I don't know what they'll do. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bulls just pull a, not that it would matter, I think, with them, but I wouldn't be surprised if they just pulled in Atlanta and sat some of their two top guys, like a Kobe White and whoever else, just because they don't want him to get hurt, because he's the one guy who has a good jump shot on that team, really is a good floor general when he's out there, and they don't want him getting hurt. So they just sit him out during their playing game against the Hawks, and they're like, all right, well, let's see who can lose the quickest so we can just get the offseason started. I agree with you. It's just it makes it very difficult on these teams, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do this summer, to say the least.
Say the least indeed. But once again, it is Alfred Ezman from Orlando Magic Daily and Fanslide. Go ahead and check out what he's doing today there. Check out his great articles. He's always got there waiting for you at orlandomagicdaily.com. Alfred, I want to go ahead and make sure before we head out, talk a little bit more about your Orlando Magic, because again, they're like the Lakers over the past week. They've been very difficult to figure out, although the Lakers is sort of easier to figure out when you don't have AD or LeBron. You're not going to be able to get done what you're going to get done. With Orlando, they have had most of their team intact, have had every opportunity to win against teams, not always like in Houston's case. Houston had already, their chance to get into the play-in was already gone by, and they still beat Orlando. That loss really probably cemented for a lot of people saying that, you see, Orlando, they're playing well above their weight. There's no way they're going to do anything in the playoffs. So I'm sure you got a lot of that on your comments. How do you combat that in any ways? Do you challenge that in any ways? Or do you say, you know what, you might be right better than you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way to think about it, it's really weird. Jamal Mosley hasn't really said, head coach Jamal Mosley, he hasn't really said a whole lot regarding that. It's just kind of been like, we didn't shoot the ball well, blah, 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 your standard, whatever, post-game chit-chat, if you will, from a coach. From what I gather and from what I see from the team, for some reason, it just seems like I don't want to say it. I'm going to sound like Joe Soro in a sec, but it
Oh no,
seems
there's
like
no way you could sound like Joe Soro.
but it seems like they're content with where they were, and they kind of just let off the pedal a little, and it completely stopped the car
I
right
just
where
don't
it
think their
was.
offense is good enough to do that. They have to play at a very
No,
high
yeah,
level because they're so offensively challenged, that team. Defensively, it's not an issue. They're one of the best they're one of the top 5 defensive teams in the NBA. That's
right.
clear. But with their offense, they will go as far as their offense takes them, because their offense, and I've watched
Hmm.
them for stretches where it's really ugly for them to manufacture points. And, Franz Wagner, I was hoping he would take that next leap into a superstar, and unfortunately he hasn't. And I'm going to be honest with you there. Banchero has been borderline all-star instead of really an all-star. I understand he was an all-star, but he's actually playing like a borderline all-star. If he's in the Western Conference, he wouldn't be an all-star. He's to be a very good player. And I don't want to always go Eastern, Western, but it's just right there for you, Alfred.
Yeah.
And Suggs, I have been behind from day one. I thought this is the player with Suggs that I thought he would be when he was in the draft. This is who I was championing for, and I really thought he was going to be a winner. I'm glad he's finally found something of a jump shot consistently to go ahead and get him there. But this team, I think, in Orlando is really going to be hard for them to go ahead and get through any of the rounds because they're so offensively challenged, Alfred.
Yes, that is very true. I mean, the one game, and really with the Houston game, in my mind, I was like, all right, that you guys messed up. You can't get the 2 seed anymore. Womp womp. Move on to the next one. You have a Bucks team that doesn't have Giannis and doesn't have Chris Middleton, and I'm like, all right, you need to go out there and get the win. I understand it's a back to back, but they're without a lot of their production that they normally get. And they go out there, and you said offensive struggles. They score 99 points. They don't even get 100 on a Bucks team that doesn't have Giannis and doesn't have Chris Middleton. Now, I'm not going to get into how much those two are on defense for the Bucks, but that's still saying something. And you look down the line here. Orlando, they didn't have a bad shooting night, but it was just not the most efficient from a lot of their players. Paolo Banchero, this is the Bucks game. Paolo Banchero, 7 for 15. Wendell Carter, their center, 3 for 9. Caleb Houston, who they had to start because Franz Wagner's been out with an ankle injury, 0 for 5 from 3, and the name of his game is the 3-point shooting. That's where they get a lot of it from. So, yeah, I'm with you. I kind of alluded to the offensive problems catching up with them at some point, but it may catch up to them earlier than I usually first thought. About a week ago when we last talked, and by earlier, I mean the first round. And if they play a team that is hitting offensively and starting to shut them down on defense, they can get swept. This team easily looks sweepable right now, and it's kind of sad considering at certain points they looked very, very competitive this year. But who knows? We'll have to see. They need to be able to rebound in at least one of these 2 games before the regular season's done. The sad part is about just how disappointing Franz has been. The Magic are, I believe, 3-6 this season when he's not healthy. So they do struggle without him, and they haven't had him these past 2 games. And I don't think they're going to have him anymore, just because they're not gonna put in their second option when they're fighting for seeding, as opposed to risking him not being there in the playoffs themselves. So I don't think we'll see any more Franz Wagner. They're going to have to fight through this without him. And if I'm them, I don't want a play-in spot. That is really where I'm at right now. Is I don't want to be in the play-in. I don't want to be, knocked out at all in any facet in that round. I want us to get in and get to a 1-6. At this point, I was hoping for home court, but not even that because they're sitting 5 right now. Just make sure you finish right below or right above Indiana at this point. Make sure you do that. And we'll just have to see how it goes. The Philly game tomorrow night will be tough, but I mean the Milwaukee game, unless Milwaukee decides to play Giannis right before the playoffs, I don't think they will with his injury. But if they do, that will be tough. But again, that's at home. The Magic significantly better at home. We'll just have to see. But yeah, certainly the offensive struggles. Going back to that, I got off on a little tangent. The offensive struggles have been something notable, and it's just kind of like a wait and see thing with that team. If they get their normal scorers hitting all at once, they're fine and they can compete with anyone. But if it's only one, if it's only Suggs, only Banchero, some nights only Franz, usually doesn't go well for them as it would when they're all together hitting.
Adam was asking in the chat, what is the status of Markelle Fultz, the one-time number 1 pick who I guess now is relegated to a backup role on the team?
As in his injury, he was expected to play.
It's a knee injury, correct?
Yes, it is. He did play against Milwaukee. It was up in the air whether or not he was going to play that game, but he did play that game as well. They're getting healthier. I mean, the other injury that they had was Gary Harris, but he's expected to play tomorrow night from what I've been hearing against Philly. The only person left on the injury report is Franz, and that's just because it was a twisted ankle. And obviously, I'm with them. I'm not playing Franz Wagner until the playoffs so we can rest that ankle up. But Markelle Fultz seems fine. Actually, I'll give him credit. He has been pretty hurt and banged up this year, but he did right before the Rockets loss have his best stretch of basketball in those few games as the Magic were fighting up in the 3-2 area. So it's just tough to see. I think Fultz has fallen into a bench role at this point with that team, however much longer he's going to be there. But he's good to go. I think he should be good to go tomorrow and throughout the season. And who knows? I mean, that's a guy they may need to step up on offense if he can in the playoffs off the bench.
They have so many of the similar type players between Fultz, Anthony, Black, Suggs.
Yeah.
They have that similar type of, good point guard to very good point guards, but still not enough maybe to get you over the hump. As long as you could use some in a trade, but we'll see. We'll see what happens as far as it's concerned, as far as you building up that roster. If they will go ahead and do some, make some changes along the skill positions. It's where they would need shooting guard or small forward. I think I'd probably focus in on there first, similar to what the Lakers might need to focus on in the offseason as well. But we'll see. Everybody needs a wing. So there you go.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. Again, very good as far as what he does for the Orlando Magic Daily. It is Alfred Ezman. Truly appreciate you stopping by. But before we head out, again, I will bring it back to the Lakers. Again, their task, which seemingly looked a lot easier Saturday afternoon when they had defeated Cleveland with ease. They had won 9 of 10. They were looking better than virtually any team out there in the NBA. And then it all went off the rails because LeBron had got the stomach virus, and then AD got smacked in the face by Kyle Anderson. It is going to be LeBron and AD returning both to the lineup, hopefully both as close to 100% that you can be at this point in time of season come Friday. We'll see, but it's going to be a very interesting trip in the West for the Lakers and also as well for the Golden State Warriors, the Phoenix Suns, the New Orleans Pelicans, and Sacramento. As those 5 teams, they battle for those last 5 spots, and I'm not counting out anybody from being a fully 100%. They're out or they're in. I guess Sacramento would be the team I'd be banking on the least because of their injuries that they sustained. But even then, you never know if it falls out down that they got the home court advantage, maybe in a couple games as far as it's concerned. They could get into the playoffs, maybe surprise somebody in the first round. But again, being so shorthanded, I think they are the team out there of that bottom five that I would least worry about at this point in time.
Yeah, certainly. And they do have that. We talked about it earlier. They do have that. Excuse me. They do have that Portland game at the end of the season that they can bank on, but they do play the teams that are right around them tonight in New Orleans and then tomorrow in Phoenix.
You can't lose 30 points, from your lineup and not feel it in some form or fashion.
Yes, that is very true, and they are starting to feel it. I mean, I think Malik Monk is one of those people who is out for them, and that's a brutal blow for them because he provides a lot of scoring, especially when De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis don't have it going as much, and when you don't have that kind of cushioning, that puts a lot on those two to perform very well. And not saying they won't. Usually, most of the time, those two are very good players. So most of the times, they'll be able to make it work. But that's still the depth is going to catch up to them at some point. And they have 2 games coming up where it's 2 teams who are, really fighting to either keep or jump ahead of them, keep the spot they have from them, or jump ahead of them for their own spot. So it's interesting to see. They certainly took a big hit with injuries, as a lot of other teams have. The other big one, I think, in that group is Brandon Ingram with the Pelicans. But we'll have to wait and see. I think they're, they definitely have a rough road ahead, and I think they're thanking the Lord above for that Portland game at the end of the year that they can at least back on.
Again, I'm rooting for all these teams to finish 47 and 35. I just think it would be fantastic. Think it'd be so funny, but also as well, it would create even more intrigue for the Lakers because then you're talking about. I know I got sent a note from Laker Nick to our email LakersFastBreak@yahoo.com about what the rumors say that New Orleans is going to let the Lakers pick this year. But if they're all finished at 47 and 35, how that pans out and how that lays out in the draft, as far as whether or not the New Orleans Pelicans will actually let the Lakers pick this year or next year. So, their draft obviously will be affected by that as well. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how it lays out. But I would absolutely love it. All 5 teams at the bottom of Western Conference ended with the same record. That would just be hilarious. So,
the epitome of competition and opposite of the Eastern Conference when it comes to their play-in scenario.
Exactly, because this one has the tie-in or it has the tiebreaker over this one, it has the tiebreaker over that one, but doesn't have to yeah. So it's all funny how that will lay out, but I doubt that will happen, but it would be kind of cool to see. But I know that I will tell you, Alfred, that I know that Adam Silver would really enjoy that as well. So yeah, just absolutely would make it for something interesting. But my friend, before I let you on out, and we do want to remind people that Joe and I will be on later tonight. We'll be talking about the Lakers more primarily as far as what's going to go on last weekend, plus some other things, including viewer comments and something I also want to add about a possible GM choice for the Lakers that could open up if the Lakers don't like where they're at. So we'll see what happens there. But before we end it out, you got to go ahead and give the cheap plug on all the things you're doing for the world of sports here for you, starting with what you're doing at OrlandoMagicDaily.com.
Yeah, with the Magic, I've been doing the recent pieces I've put out. If y'all look on there, are playoff scenarios, in particular with the Knicks and Cavs. That could still hold very true, even with Orlando floundering as of right now. If the season ended right now, everything stopped. Orlando would have a series with Cleveland, a road series against Cleveland. And then let's say Orlando even drops behind Indiana for that 6th spot, there's a Knicks series. So I have those 2 playoff previews, if it were to happen, kind of out on Orlando Magic Daily. Hopefully, I'm trying to get something out on anything happening in these last 2 games of the season. Hopefully, Orlando pulls out a win for their own sake. We'll have to see what happens there, but that's what I have going on with Orlando Magic Daily. Moving on to college basketball, season just ended. Congrats to the UConn Huskies on back-to-back national championships. A lot going on in Hardwood Heroics covering the Kentucky job, which is a huge story in college basketball right now, as well as the transfer portal. I just had something come out today on if there's any Arizona fan people out there. Omar Ballo transferring out of Arizona and Tucson, looking for a new destination. And what I believe is his final year of eligibility. So he'll be playing somewhere else for one more season. That ought to be interesting. as far as race-colored glasses, if there's any Angels people out there, thank you for having the Tampa Bay Rays. It was a great series win for the team to help boost them up, and I have a lot.
Somewhere Cool Bro is crying because
I
I'm a like Angels fan, like in the least possible sense. I was really
right.
I was Dodger fan when I grew up, switched over to the Angels. Then
Oh
over the
man,
years, the Angels, after they won their championship, they've like gone off the deep end. Did not trade away Otani and Trout like they should have many years ago, and they're paying the price now, and it's just so hard to get into it. But cool, bro. Oh, they're gonna win the World Series. They're gonna win. They're winning so much, and then I'm like, it's 162 games, and then the
it's a
Tampa Bay
long
Rays,
season.
and the
It's a
Tampa Bay
long
Rays
season.
flew in to Anaheim and dismantled. Yes, cool, bro. Our 15-year-old follower here is just going to be so upset when I rub that in his nose here later on when I probably see him later. But yeah, just again, Tampa Bay Rays. We'll see where they're going at. But again, it's going to be very interesting. I know Joe is keenly watching what the Dodgers are going to do as far as how they'll play out the season. I know the Otani situation got a little bit easier with the federal, I guess, reports as far as the announcement. The feds are not really looking at Otani and that they're just going ahead and focusing on the interpreter. And they're saying Otani had nothing to do with it. So I think everybody, including Rob Manfred, is having a sigh of relief there. So, yeah.
Yes. I know the Dodgers are a huge distraction for them. They've definitely, Joe might be able to tell you, they've let some games slip that they shouldn't have so far this year. But again, like you said, it's 165 games, and we're not even almost 3 weeks into the season. So there's a long way to go. But of course, keep watching stuff for the Tampa Bay Rays. I have it on Rays colored glasses. Buffalo Bills, occasional offseason article, kind of in a dead time in between now and the NFL draft, just waiting on the draft to happen for the Bills, seeing what they're doing. Stephon Diggs trade was big. I went over some wide receiver prospects that they could get to replace him in some facet, but it'll be interesting to see what they can do with that. And that's really it. Just a lot more sports going on. NBA playoffs, MLB's in full swing, NFL offseason, college basketball off-season's even occurring. So a lot of stuff everywhere. Just search my name up on the internet. You'll find something I did.
So funny because Darren was asking, how's Fultz doing? Because I believe he becomes a free agent here this summer. And it's funny. I said, how's his shooting? He asked how his shooting was. And I'm like, I think the words broadside of a barn would probably be the best way you could say it. I said he shoots threes worse than AD, and I think that's all you need to know. So yeah.
Yes, he can get to the basket pretty good when he does it, but anything from mid-range outward is kind of a prayer.
And if I was the other team, I would just say, you know what? I'm 15, 20 feet away from you. There you go. Take that shot. I'll give it to you.
And that's funny. The Chicago Bulls did that in a game they played a week ago, and he had his foot on the three-point line, and he drilled it. And they went back. They counted it as a three, but then they went back and looked at it. It was only a two. So very rare Fultz three, not meant to be there. Toe on the line.
22%. I just checked. That is absolutely abysmal.
Goodness.
And it's so funny because I know that AD had shot 18% from 3-pointers last year. And all I heard this summer and still into the year is like, oh, AD's got to shoot more three. AD's got to shoot more three. I'm like, what logic would allow you to have your worst 3-point shooter shoot more threes? Why do you want to take away possessions from other players or other things that Fultz could be doing better or AD could be doing better? Why on earth would you have them shoot? Oh, it's going to draw the defense out. No, it isn't.
No.
Those defenses are allowing that to happen.
Right. No, there's certainly, I'm trying to think, there's probably a good handful of Lakers players you'd rather take anyway. Let them have the threes, let them shoot them.
Or put AD down low to do what he needs to do.
That's a good idea, Gerald. I like that. That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Look at you over there.
Yeah, the concept of putting your best post player in the post instead of out.
You can take Darvin Ham's job at this point. It's that easy. Let's put him down low. I like it. But yeah, I mean, you're not. If anyone out there is looking for Fultz as a potential free agency target, he's a solid bench guard who plays hard defense, gets to the rack, scores on occasion, but scores on occasion when he gets to the basket. Pretty decent finisher. But again, his shooting from mid-range outward, kind of questionable. And I don't think he'll really have it in his career since he's been in the league. So for a good amount at this point. I mean, It's just how he is. So don't spend too much money on him and make it a short contract. Is my
I
advice.
agree. A minimum at best, or maybe even the lower, as far as the 4.5,
Mhm.
$5 million one is at the
Yes.
exception. Maybe that the biannual, that's at the best for him, just because he's so athletic and do other things besides shoot the basketball. But as a backup, that's what I think his career is going to be going for, which is kind of sad. Again, someone that you
Mm.
drafted as a number one pick, and you're always expecting those kind of things. But as I always talk with Stone Hansen here, who's our resident draft expert, it's a crapshoot every single time. So, yep.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, my friend, it's great having you back on the show. I know I'm going to bring you back on soon to cover the Eastern and Western Conference playoffs. So we'll go ahead and talk about that here when they're more solidified, probably maybe next week or as it gets
Mhm.
closer to the first round, the official first round of the NBA playoffs. But any last thoughts, my friend, before we head on out?
No, everyone get ready. It's going to be an exciting end of the week as the season winds down. A lot of spots to be filled up. Big games tonight. Watch Kings Pelicans. That's huge for the bottom of the West. Uh, and just watch out as well. Eastern Conference, that middle of the pack is still kind of tight. I know it's top heavy with the Celtics, not as good at the bottom with the Bulls and Hawks, but watch that middle. It's getting very interesting. And I don't know. I'm very excited for the playoffs. Almost here. Um, just keep tuning in, keep watching. Thank you once again, Gerald and the Lakers Fast Break, for having me. I love this show. Watch you all as much as I can, and continue to have me on. I love being on. Love talking hoops.
We definitely love having you on. I wanted to mention to Adam, Stone was on a Monday show, and then go ahead and check out on report_court. He's been doing a lot of draft. He's back in it. He was trying to go cold turkey away from the draft analysis and couldn't quite get away. So he's doing it now big time. But Alfred, always great to have you here. Always fantastic. Always love having you part. Again, I always love these different opinions, varying opinions from people that are not always associated with the Lakers. So it's always great to hear what you have to say. And as the NBA playoffs continue, I will still be doing coverage. Even wherever the Lakers land, as far as that's concerned, and in the playoffs, playing. If it continues, if it doesn't continue, we'll still be covering it each and every day, or as much as we can, right here at the Lakers Fast Break. And obviously, we'd love to have you on as much as you can as well, my friend.
Yes, sir. Always looking forward to being back, and I'll definitely be back at some point when the playoffs are in full swing.
Darren, that's going to be hard because they're on two different time zones and different schedules. But I actually, there was also another suggestion for another pairing. So yeah, I'll put it out there to the guys on the email, Darren, and see if they can get just that. We'll see what we can do. See now, Alfred, we've got all the different pairings now that they're asking for, all these different people that they want on the show. So I'll do the best I can. But Alfred, as long as you're coming back, it makes for a great show. So truly appreciate it. Don't forget tonight, Joe returns. Joe has promised me that he will be back for tonight for 10 o'clock show tonight. It's a snack pack late night. We'll be talking about the Lakers. We'll be talking about some of your comments. We're talking about a possible GM replacement that may not be who we've been saying it might be. So we'll see. Again, Gerald Glassford, thanks again for watching, listening. Truly appreciate it. We'll see you later tonight right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.